everybody. Today we have an amazing doctor with us. Her name is Dr. Tanaya. She is popularly known as Dr. Cuterus, a very cute name indeed. And we will be delving into knowing more about sex, masturbation, and more. Definitely words that you hear and you go like, what? Girls talking about these things? What? Yeah, taboo topics, but we would definitely love to talk about it and get to know more about you, Dr. Tanaya. So could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. Okay, before we start off, it's this is a common thing that happens with everybody. It's actually Tanaya and not Tanaya.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I know it's not a name that you hear that often. So I know a lot of people do either call me Tanya or Tanaya. So this is fine. Tanaya is the Sanskrit word for daughter. So when my parents had me, they were like, we have a daughter. Let's name her daughter. And that is the very imaginative story of how I was named. So, yeah, I'm a doctor, like you mentioned. I do a lot of work with sexual and reproductive health, particularly with regards to education, because we really don't have enough of that in this world, do we? So, yeah, medical education is a passion of mine. I also run the Instagram account, like you mentioned, Dr. Cuterus, where I do talk about all of these things, and I try to make like lots of Bollywood memes and stuff like that. So people stay interested, and it doesn't sound too scary, because a lot of times when you go to the doctor, it can be very scary, and I'm trying to sort of change that image.
Why the name Dr. Cuterus?
The uterus is the cutest organ in our body.
What makes you feel like it's the cutest organ in the body? I mean, I would definitely say that a lot of people do not agree with the uterus even being a fancy part of the body. So what makes you think that it's the cutest part of the body?
So I have a really strong gripe, which is that the brain and the heart get all the credit, but without the uterus, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be walking around if we didn't have that home initially. There would be no fancy brain development. There would be no fancy heart development if we didn't have that little home. It's our first home. It's the cutest place. Your home is the, what do they say? Home is where the heart is. So yeah, my heart lives in the uterus. It's the best place on earth, not Disneyland.
What made you choose this profession? What made you want to decide that this is what you want to talk about? This is where you want to spread, awareness. This is what you want to educate about of all the things in the world.
Both my parents are doctors and they're both fertility specialists. So this has kind of been a very normal conversation in my family, and it hasn't been, sex ki baat or anything of that sort. It's been very normal. It's like, in a doctor's family, the same way we discuss poop, the same way we discuss sex. It's very technical because everybody does it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then I realized the more and more I talked to other people, I realized I was the odd one out who was being always like, sexy to hai. And then, it did make for some very awkward moments, but also I did realize that so many people had so many weird ass myths around this stuff that I figured, I know this stuff, why can't I just talk about it?
Talk about it. Exactly. So I remember when we were talking about having an interview with you, one of the team members asked me to talk to you about, there's this fear in everybody when you go to a gynec or when you go to anybody that has anything to do with your sexual organs, and they asked you, are you sexually active in front of your parents? And then you just go like, okay, do I lie to my gynec or do I tell them the truth? My parents are sitting next to me. So how do you deal with a situation like that? Do you have anything to tell, the young Indian children on how to go about situations like that?
So this might sound slightly duplicitous, but you should go to the doctor on your own. It should never be with somebody else, because even if you go in there with your best friend, you're never going to talk about, your deepest, darkest, I don't know, vaginal fears or something. So whenever you're walking into an interview room with your doctor, be alone. And I think this is a practice that is seen in most places. Unfortunately, I know in India, we don't really have this sort of well spread as much. But yeah, go alone so that you can talk alone. Don't even go with your partner. Go alone. Because first of all, not many doctors do ask this question. If you're sexually active, they'll straight up ask you, are you married or not? Or how long have you been married for? Yeah. Which is rather unfortunate. But, I'm very happy to see that the tide is turning and more people are accepting the fact that we have an underground sexual revolution in India.
Do you think
And
it's very slow though? Is it slow or is it building up right now?
I think it's very much at its peak. Like if you speak to any of your friends, if you take a sample set of like 10 of your friends, I can guarantee 3 of those would have been on a night out in the past 6 months with their boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever. And they would have done some kind of, if not a night out, they would have gone out for the day and just hooked up with their partner, be it making out, be it actually having sex. So everybody is doing it. Like, you know, the kids you think in school are like the seedha wala bachas who don't do anything, and then you talk to them and they're like, yeah, so I lost my virginity to my girlfriend 4 girlfriends ago, kind of thing. So and you're like, wait, when did you have 5 girlfriends? When did this happen?
When did this happen? But there's still the stigma around talking about it, right?
Absolutely.
Like the Western culture is very open about it, but the Indian culture is not, because our the generations of our parents or our grandparents cannot accept it at all. So how do you go about having a scenario or a culture in India where you can actually openly talk about your sexual experiences? How do we get there? Like, what are the baby steps to take?
Actually, there is this huge misconception that the West is not like this, but actually, the West is where all of these ideologies came in from. Because in India, we've had a very sex positive, very, I don't know, accepted culture around the idea of sex. It's never been this. Uh, it was actually a result of the Victorian morality that was imposed on us when the British colonized us, because thank you, that messed everything up. And this was one of the other things that did get messed up. So if we can learn a little bit about our culture, about our history, and sort of go back to our roots and find out that, you know what, if they talked about it 300 years ago, 200 years ago, why are we so whitewashed? Why are we so heavily colonized, even now, 70 years later, that we can't accept what our past, what India has been about, and how accepting we've been. Like, we have the Hijra community, we have in Kerala, there the Namudri, no, the Nayar, there's a caste called the Nayars.
Nair, yeah.
They have this culture of, what is it, Sambandham, which is where,
Sambandham.
yeah, which is where, you know, you're allowed to take whatever partner you want, and it doesn't have to be defined under the idea of a marriage. Multiple partners was never a problem.
But such
Polyandry
cultures are
was never a
not
problem.
followed anymore.
Because the Victorians,
Now.
the Britishers outlawed it. They put their laws on us in a country where their laws don't make any sense.
So we were much more free, we were much more open, and then they regressed us. Is that what happened?
Absolutely, 100%. Put the blame on them.
Put the blame on them. We have been blaming the British for everything. So
One more thing to the list.
One more thing on the list. Yeah, we should probably ask Shashitaru to talk about this. You know, like an international thing. Until and unless someone like him actually talks about it in a global forum, yeah, it's not a thing. Yeah. Okay. So, have you come across any kind of medically negligent practices in your sector?
Yeah, actually, it's very unfortunate. Like, we started off with the fact that most people never even ask you if you're sexually active.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they'll just be like, oh, she's an unmarried girl. Cool. So there's nothing sexual that could have happened down here. She's having a stomach pain. You will never think that she may have had a pelvic inflammatory disease because, you know, she's had a sexually transmitted infection. You'll always be like, oh yeah, she has period pain. Or maybe go to the, I don't know, stomach doctor because you're having gastritis. They will never think along these lines, which is rather unfortunate, but that's what it is.
So I knew of a case where one of my friends was using sanitary pads and she had major infection and she did not know the cause of why she was getting the infections. So she assumed that it was because of her sexual practices and she was really scared. So she did not talk to anybody about it. And she saw a doctor in private without telling anybody. However, the doctor could also not figure out that it was because of sanitary pads. However, it took her a really long time, around a span of 4 to 5 years, to even figure out that it was because of pads and switch from pads to other sustainable products. So is it because we don't talk about this enough that we are not able to see these problems? Or what is the reason why this is happening? And how can we make sure that this doesn't keep happening again and again?
I think we have this sort of systematic culture of evading the problem. The doctors don't want to address it, the patients don't want to address it. So, if there's a problem from both ends, the bridge is never going to be built. And we need to build that bridge. People do need to start talking about these things. And also, there's a very big problem where people do fall to a lot of quackery. They will never go to an actual legit doctor. They'll be like, I don't know, there's a Baba who lives in my gully who's going to cure me. Right. I do understand where people sort of do lose hope and they sort of turn to these other things, but the majority of the people start from here. And when the problem gets really, really bad, they're like, oh, cool, let's go to the doctor now. And the doctor is just like, yeah, if you came to me 6 months ago, I could have sorted this, but now I can't.
Exactly. That makes sense. It was the same thing with her. If they'd realized that this is the problem, it was an actual doctor. It was an actual doctor, but they still couldn't figure it out. So if they had known it earlier, the condition of her sexual organs or her genital organs wouldn't have been that worse. Absolutely. She was in pain. She was in constant pain. She couldn't go to school or she couldn't go to college anymore. So it's very unfortunate, a situation like that. Do you think, so I've personally noticed that there's this trend of these big companies, MNCs, promoting these products such as sanitary napkins so much that people around the world, and especially India, do not know the existence of any other products. So they don't even try to use any other product or even cloth for that matter, because pads seem like the only option that you have. And that's the way you see the, advertisements, and that's the way everybody talks to you as well. So what are the side effects of it? How much can it affect you? And what steps can we take to move towards a more sustainable future?
So there is one point where I slightly differ on this account, is that yes, the pads are promoted as the only option, but that's because 70% of Indian population is rural, right? And these 70% people use cloths, and these are not hygienic cloths. They use whatever leftover cloth is in their house that's about to tear. They use leaves. My mom is from a village, and she's had to use all these ripped off cloths, and like she's a gynecologist right now. She's one of the best gynecologists in my city, but even she's had to go through all of these things. So I think the first step we should realize is that before we can think of alternative methods, we do need to promote the fact that use pads instead of using a cloth or a dirty cloth. Okay. Reusable pads, sure. But I do see the value in sort of putting the place on the importance of sanitary products, because it's important to be sanitary. But yes, of course, like you mentioned, there's a huge problem with sustainability. I'm a menstrual cup user myself. And there are so many problems that people face with pads aside from the sustainability issue. So many menstruators get pad rashes, especially with the kind of climate we have in this belt. It's hot, it's humid, and then you put like this rough piece of plastic between your legs that constantly rubs there. It's just so common. And then, of course, there was this video that was viral quite recently where somebody found a worm inside one of their pads. That's just unfortunate. But I think we have to be very, very proactive in first making sure that menstrual hygiene is a priority, and then, of course, talking about other things as well.
So there was this entire talk about how, and a case was also filed, I think, about how Whisper should change their name from Whisper. Oh, did you didn't know about
it? Good idea. No, I had no idea about this.
Even I had absolutely no idea about it. Somebody told me today, hey, you should talk to her about this. And I was like, yeah, cool. I don't know about it. But I think that's a big cool thing to do, like changing.
Absolutely.
Maybe it's a progressive step, yeah?
Let's just call it Shout instead of Whisper.
That would be cool. So we were talking about, we wanted to also talk about the myths surrounding around masturbation. What do you think? There are so many myths in India in itself that are spread by almost everybody, every household, where the family would tell you that, oh, you're having pimples, and that's the reason is because you're probably doing things that you're not supposed to be doing at this. If you stop doing that, you'll stop. So is that a real?
So think about this. When you start masturbating is usually when you hit puberty, right? Or maybe a couple of years into hitting puberty. What is the very obvious side effect of hitting puberty? Testosterone in your body rises. What happens when testosterone rears its ugly head and says hello? You get pimples. Now, whether or not you masturbate, when you're hitting puberty, you are going to get pimples. And then, if you throw in the masturbation angle, you can very easily blame this. In science, we call this causation versus correlation. This is just a correlation. That's like saying, I don't know, sitting in a car will give you lung cancer because most people smoke in their car. So this is a correlation. It's not actually an actual association.
It doesn't.
So many myths around masturbation. It's very unfortunate, but masturbation is a healthy, wonderful expression of your sexuality. So many people really discover what they like and what they don't like while masturbating, and then that makes for a better sex life later on when you do decide to be sexually active with your partner. And so many health benefits as well. I mean, talk about stress relief.
Could you tell us a few health benefits?
So masturbation, first of all, again, stress relief. It makes your blood vessels more relaxed. So what happens in hypertension is that your blood vessels get narrow and your blood is pumped with a lot more force. That's why your blood pressure rises. So if you do masturbate, your blood vessels relax, which means there's less tension on your blood vessels, which means you're happier in general. And I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, that's amazing. That's amazing. I think, there needs to be more awareness and education around among children. Not children, but at least grown-ups.
Young adults.
Healthy, young adults, on how it is healthy. But our education system does not actually give us anything at all related to this. But what happens is when you're in 9th grade and 10th grade, when you have these things in your syllabus, the teacher either takes a leave or just explains the important things in very scientific terms and walks away. So you never really get proper education. You don't even know what is sex or what is sexual intercourse. You have absolutely no clue. You are left to go on your own and probably Google and find it out, or explore and find out on your own, or have random conversations with your friends and find it out on other platforms which may not even be true or real. So what are the problems with finding out about sexuality or sexual intercourse in this way and not actually being educated by it?
I'm going to tell you my most famous, the story that I go and tell everybody when they ask me why I do what I do. My parents both are fertility specialists. So they established the first fertility center of my city when there was nobody else who was doing this. So anybody who had a fertility problem would go to them, right? And mostly, you can find out causes on the male end, you can find out causes on the female end. And then there's some unexplained issues. So they had a couple, let's call them Mr. A and Miss B. Mr. A had a very healthy sperm count. Mrs. B had very, very good eggs. Everything, it didn't make sense why they're not having babies, right? 7 years of infertility. I'm not talking 6 months, I'm talking straight up 7 years of infertility. Young couple, like late 20s, I suppose. So finally, my dad sat them down one day, not them, Mr. A, and he was like, yeah, so what's happening? Why are you not able to, conceive? What's happening here? So he started to find out the step-by-step process of what Mr. A was doing with Mrs. B to find out what's going wrong. Okay. And it turns out this poor fellow had been putting it in the belly button for 7 years. Because bachcha to pet se aata hai.
Oh my God!
7 years.
Goodness!
Now, this story is from 15 years ago when porn wasn't as common and internet wasn't as common. But think of his logic. Bachcha pet se aata hai. It is foolproof. It makes absolute sense. If the baby is going to come from your tummy, where will you put it? You'll put it in the hole in the tummy, right?
Oh my God. Do you think there will be people doing this even now?
Sorry?
Do you think there will be people doing this even now?
I'm quite certain. I remember when I was posted in community medicine. So in medical school, we have 2 years of community medicine where we learn about public health. And we were posted in the village for a bit. And I had to go and counsel a couple on contraception. Yes, I had to talk about condoms. So I went in my second year and, they had a young child and I was just telling them that, you should avoid sex right now because she's just given birth. And then once you do decide to have sex again, you should use condoms. And they're like, what is a condom? So I took a banana, I rolled it onto a banana, I showed it to them.
Okay.
And they're like, cool, we'll use this, great, thank you, doctor. And then I went away. Now I come back next year for the same
Use it on the
posting.
banana. Don't know. I can't. What imagine
Someone
this?
walks out pregnant again, and I'm like, wait, what happened here? So he's like, madam, you told us to put it on a banana, we did it, and now she's pregnant, what do we do?
Oh my God.
So yeah, and this is from 2013 and 14, so this is not really old.
Yeah. So I work as a menstrual educator. So one thing that I see very commonly is how people think that men think that menstrual blood is blue. They think menstrual blood is blue in color because of the advertisements.
Oh my God.
Blue colored liquid. So they think menstrual blood is blue in color. Or they think that once they get married and their wife gets their period, they think that their wife has blood cancer. It's that bad. So the education. So obviously there's a lack of education. There's a huge lack of awareness and lack of education. So what we do is we go around schools and colleges and take sessions for boys and girls alike together, mixed, and we make sure that they know these things. Yeah. So I think there needs to be more people who talks about sex and masturbation as well.
Absolutely. And thank you for doing the wonderful work you do.
Thank you so much. So when we go to schools, right, sometimes the principals do not let us take sessions because they tell us, no, you can't do this. You're going to talk about sex. That's not okay. So we tell them, we're actually not going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about menstruation in particular. So we only cover those aspects. But the social aspects, the political aspects, the environmental aspects, every single aspect. And then we introduce them to all the options available so that they can choose what they want. So we give the pros and cons of each and every product. So just to make them aware. But they're so worried that if you talk about menstruation, children will know about sex and they will involve in the act of sexual intercourse. And parents would blame the school and the administration for it. That they straight up say no.
What a shame. What an absolute shame.
About it. But luckily in Kerala, I've not seen that much. But outside Kerala, yes, a lot in Karnataka. I've not been to other states to take sessions, so I'm not very sure about it. But very unfortunate. Yeah. So how can we start changing this? Other than, education from just social media or the internet, how can we get into the physical spaces and start teaching and start educating?
So I do get this from a lot of people where there's a lot of criticism around the idea of education on social media because they think that, you're only helping the sort of privileged people who have access to social media and things like that. So first of all, India, I think by financial year 2023, they're estimated to be 500 million viewers of online content in India. That's 1/3 of our country's population. If 1/3 of the country's population can see this stuff, I think your job's done. Like, we can fill. So there's also this very big trickle-down effect that, for example, my house help, when her daughter was pregnant, there was, are you frozen or am I frozen?
You are frozen. Okay, better.
Oh,
yeah.
Is this working?
Yeah, it's working.
Perfect. So my house help, when her daughter was pregnant, she refused to bring her daughter for her regular checkup at the hospital. So we told her we were doing all of her checkups for free and we said, just come over to the hospital, today's your day for doing it. And she refused a free examination because she says, no, there's an eclipse today. And, my daughter will, bear the brunt of going out in the eclipse when she's pregnant. And then we sat her down and then we counseled her about it, that, there's no effect of the eclipse on this. And then she went and told everybody in her family that, nothing happens because of the eclipse. So I know 10 pregnant women learned that day that,
amazing.
Eclipses don't do anything. So if we can get one educated person to tell another, maybe, less educated person, they are like a great broadcasting channels, so they can go and tell other people as well. There's this quote that says, a mosquito can keep a strong warrior awake all night. So we shouldn't underestimate the effect of very small changes. Aside from this, of course, we do need people that go actually in those physical spaces and talk about these things. But you have to have a particular skill set to be able to convince a different sort of people from your own kind. So yeah, if we can get more people on board who can actually go and communicate these things in person, it would be so wonderful.
Yeah, very true, very true. So this is also one thing that happens a lot. So when you start talking about unconventional topics such as this, such as menstruation or sex or masturbation, and then you address a gathering about this, or you have a video upon any of these things, and then your family members or relatives or people go like, there are so many things in the world that you could talk about. There are so many issues and problems happening in the world, and this is what you have to choose. This is what you want to talk about. How could you do this? You're ruining the family. So these kind of outlooks still exist. Yeah. So it's high time we grow up from this.
Very much so. I think, the more and more people do it, the more and more it's going to be normalized, right? Like, think of this. Donald Trump became a president, and like, we can now actively think of a reality TV star becoming a president, because that's not an outlandish idea that only exists in science fiction anymore.
Very true. Very true. Anything is possible.
You can normalize slightly. Anything's possible. So just doing these things normalizes them, and the more we do it, the more these become everyday conversations. So yeah.
I saw this Netflix series. It's called Sex Explained. So they talk about attraction, they talk about contraception, they talk about pregnancy, they talk about childbirth, and all the issues and problems related to it. So when I saw the episode on contraception, I realized that I learned that contraception is very female oriented. Yeah, there are condoms, but then most of the contraception are female oriented. That is pills, I-pill or emergency pills, or the pills that you have to take every single day. It's all female oriented. There are no male pills available in the market. And the reason that they said was because whenever the male pills were brought in to test, to be tested, the side effect was mood swings or nausea, which is the exact same thing that the female contraceptive pills have as well. So are we going to be looking at a future where we will be having more options for males as well? Would there be any options such as that, or will women have to bear the brunt of it all?
So this is biological unfairness, because men can have sex without protection and walk away with it and not have to bear anything about it. This is like a staunchly feminist issue that, we're biologically at a lower step here, that, we have this risk, and it sort of, as a product of that, become our responsibility, which is rather unfortunate. But yeah, like you said, severe mood swings, nausea, abdominal cramps, not able to get out of bed for days at an end, hormonal issues, all of these things, men don't tolerate that shit. They're like, oh no, I'm too cool for this, so I can't have a pill every day. It's too emasculating. And then they don't have these. I mean, it's so stupid, right? There are some products that are being worked upon. I know Oxford is doing something that they're doing a reversible contraceptive implant, the same way, women get a reversible contraceptive implant in their arms over here. So they're planning on doing something similar in men. But
Could you please explain on that? Could you please elaborate on that?
So you can get this small implant that you can get over here inside your arm. I don't know if they put it in India. I know they put it in the UK. I've never had to put it in India, because most people here prefer to get an intrauterine device, which is
copper T.
If you've heard of Mirena, if you've heard of copper T, all of these things, because the idea of getting a small incision on your arm is painful, right? For a copper T, you can just go inside in the naturally existing hole that's there, so you don't have to make an incision.
Yeah. So how does this work, the incision on the arm?
So they get like a really tiny cut, like it's the size of, maybe if you put those pencil leads together, if you put two of those together, it's that thin. It's not big at all. Okay. But they put a tiny cut and then they slide it right in, and it releases some hormones that sort of protect you from a pregnancy.
All right. Maybe more awareness on the same is also required now. Yeah.
Absolutely. I also know that because I live in a smaller town, I know most of the people, most of the clientele that I get to see will not go for this. But I'm pretty sure in bigger towns this would be available or being practiced more frequently than I would know.
Okay. So I think there's a huge lack of people who talk about sex, as in, professionals who can help around the aspect of sex in India. As in, we don't have many sex therapists. We don't have many couples therapists who are specialized in sex therapy as well. People don't realize, people don't know if they can actually go to somebody to understand their sexual problems, or the attraction that they have with their partners. If there's something wrong with it, if they're doing something wrong, if everything's okay, how to get things better, or if you've had trauma in your past, how to overcome that and actually start having a healthier sexual life with your partners. So do you think there's a lack thereof, or do you think it's because of the taboo that people are not opting for an option like that? Or do you think gynecologists will do for something, for an option like that, or fertility centers and gynecologists, they can make do for it?
Absolutely not. Gynecologists cannot make do for it because most gynecologists are not trained in sexual health. They're trained in reproductive health. There's no component of like, even when I started doing this, there were so many gynecologists that came up to me and were like, why are you tarnishing your reputation for the future? Why do you want to be known as a sexologist? And I was like, you talk about having babies, how are people going to have babies without this? And like, what if there's a problem here? And like, why is your fertility center existing if you can't talk about these issues? Most of the idea of sexual health around India is either, those ads you see on the walls along, like in rural areas where say Gupt Rog ka ilaj, or it's a sexologist, which will usually be a balding man. Yeah, and a balding man in his 40s that you feel really creeped out going to. So even there, like, I know very few doctors who would actively talk about, I don't know, what are the precautions you should have for having anal sex. And I don't mean this in India, I mean this in the West as well. That it's such a huge taboo. We like to pretend it doesn't exist, but we desperately need people like this. Like, again, pick a sample size, choose 20 of your friends. I can guarantee 2.5 of those people would have tried anal sex and, not known what to do. And out of those 2.5, one person would have bled and freaked out and been like, oh, wow, well, I'm well and truly done for. So, makes sense.
All right. I also wanted to talk about, I read an article last year or so where it was talking about how to make your vagina look whiter, how to, make it look fairer, and how to make your vagina smell better. And there's so many options and tips on how you can scrub it and, use other kind of products and eat more pineapple and things like that. So what is it about? Is it true? Is it necessary? Why are there articles like that? Do you need to change the color of your vagina? Are all vaginas similar to each other? There's so many questions. Could you just, tell us something about it?
So the first thing that needs to be cleared up here is the vagina is the part on the inside. So if you do put pineapple on the inside, that's not going to go down well.
So eating pineapples apparently does something.
So like, when people say you should scrub your vagina, like, I can't imagine putting some scrub on my finger and like going at it inside my nose. It's the same stuff that's on the inside of your nose, that's the same stuff on the inside of your vagina. It's a mucous membrane, right? It's the vulva that needs to be changed, and a lot of people do put vaginal washes inside their vagina because it's called a vaginal wash, right? I mean, the problem starts from there. Either they'll call it an intimate hygiene wash, God alone knows what that means, or they will call it a vaginal wash. And it's very natural. If you call something a hair wash, I'm going to put it in my hair. If you tell me this is a vaginal wash, I'm going to stuff it into my vagina. And that's a terrible idea because this is where you screw up your vaginal health. Your vagina is supposed to have nothing on the inside. And then, of course, thank you porn, thank you surgery, thank you sexualized media that has led so many people to believe that the color of your vulva or your testicles or the skin of your genitals is supposed to be fair and lovely. It's not. it's naturally darker than the rest of your skin, first of all, and that's the case in every skin fold. If you look at your underarms, you'll see that there is a skin fold here and the skin is darker. If you look at maybe an obese person, if you look at the skin fold on their neck, you will see that the skin fold will be darker, because that's how skin works. If there is a fold, there will be friction. Friction will cause darkness, and that's a very, very, very natural thing. And we've got things like genital bleaching now, we've got genital whitening creams, we've got vaginal tightening creams and all that crap, which is just a way of making money out of befooling people, because these things don't do shit, to put it politely.
Yeah, very true, very true. So there still exists this practice called husband stitches. I read about it recently. So how prevalent is it in India?
So the point of a husband stitch starts from the fact that the vagina in itself is quite large, right? It can expand quite a lot. The problem is the entrance of it. So the actual part you see on the outside. When baby is being delivered, the entire baby can fit inside the vagina well and good. Your vagina is like a distensible balloon. The problem is the mouth of the balloon is quite small. And sometimes you have to cut the mouth of the balloon to let the baby out. This is called an episiotomy. And this is given in 90% vaginal deliveries, because the baby's head is 10 centimeters big. That's big.
So that's huge.
Yeah. So 90% cases you will get an episiotomy, and the episiotomy has to be stitched up, right? You can't leave a gaping hole in somebody's vagina. So it starts off, it includes the vagina, and it sort of goes tirha, it kind of goes into near your butt area. And when this has to be stitched up, sometimes they do sort of stitch it up a little bit more than necessary, and that's usually a protective mechanism. That's more to be like, when you get up, when you sit down, you're going to stretch those muscles a lot, you're going to stretch that skin a lot. And unfortunately, and I do blame the doctors in a huge part over here, where they don't explain to the patient that this is what's happening to you. People start thinking that this is done for, I don't know, tightening my vagina. Your vagina can't get tighter. Your vagina is an elastic organ. It's going to go back to the same size. It's going to expand in size. Nobody's stitching the inside of the vagina. And I think of it. If you take a balloon and then the balloon is like this big on the back end, and just the hole is tight, that's not going to increase any sexual pleasure, right? Unless the entire thing is this tight, that's when it makes sense. If just this much is tight, it doesn't make any sense for increasing sexual pleasure. And this is unfortunately, I don't want to say misconception, because it sounds like I'm sort of being dismissive of the concern. This is done, yes, but this is done to heal the vagina, to heal the genital area after a baby. And because nobody talks about these things, people think it's different when actually it's meant to be something else. It's very, very sad, but that's how this works.
Okay. I had absolutely no clue about that, because I read a lot of stories on how it has been extremely painful for women. Intercourse becomes extremely hard after the stitches have been done, and it goes on and on for many years, and then they realize that this has been done to them. So they start blaming the doctors for it. So maybe if the doctor explains to them, like
exactly,
it will make more sense. Yeah,
exactly. A lot of times this scar tissue doesn't heal properly, so it heals in an improper way, and that scar tissue in itself can become painful. And this is where the problem steps in, because nobody tells you how to take care of it. Nobody tells you what to do with it. A lot of times people don't even know they've been cut downstairs. So we really need to talk about this, because this is done as a protective, not as a protective thing. This is done as a necessary thing. You can't get a baby out unless you make a cut there. And then, because nobody addresses this, because nobody tells you what it is, it has become sort of this malicious thing that doctors do.
There are also practices of female genital mutilation happening across the world. So how to make sure that, such cruelty does not keep happening, and, the number of it decreases or reduces, especially with regard to female sexuality and female pleasure?
So the reason why FGM, which is female genital mutilation, started off as a practice was to control the sexuality of women, because historically women have been, and I'm talking in particular regards to the Western world. You know, in the Eastern world, be it Chinese civilization, be it Indian civilization, we've had a more sort of equal status for women maybe 1,000 years ago, but it was there. And then, you know, with the way things have changed, the power of sexuality which women hold is very strongly controlled. And this is where the process of FGM steps in, where if an, you know, most women don't realize that sexual pleasure should be a priority for them. And, you know, if you can destroy the tissue that is the seat of the sexual pleasure, which is usually the clitoris, you know, they can't become sort of wanton women and, you know, lusty women and outgoing women and all that crap. So again, it's a politicized means of controlling and policing women's bodies and taking away bodily agency. And we need to recognize that and then start combating this. Unfortunately, this practice is so prevalent that, you know, you actually physically need to be there to stop this and to educate people, because a lot of times it's associated with family traditions, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. It's very hugely a thing of, you know, you're messing with our culture by trying to do this. And this is where the battle gets really, really tough.
So does smoking affect conception by any means?
So yes, smoking has a huge impact on fertility. So the egg quality is sort of, I don't want to use the word destroyed, but egg quality is degraded by smoking. Sperm quality changes dramatically once you quit smoking, because new sperm are synthesized every 3 months. So it's like you get a fresh stock essentially. So if you quit smoking and then 3 months later the fresh stock of sperm you see, so much better. There's something called oxidative stress, which is kind of like, you know, a loose kid in a candy shop where it's just like, oh my God, I'm going to go and touch everything. And this is what oxidative stress does. We have this one sort of lost little boy oxygen, which is just like, oh my God, I'm going to touch everything, and it breaks everything. And this is how oxidative stress damages fertility, which is hugely linked with smoking and other problems that smoking causes.
All right. Thank you so much for answering that question. I'm pretty sure it's something that, you know, a lot of people try to disprove. Yeah, definitely try to disprove. We need to know about mostly. And thank you so much for being such an amazing person, spreading awareness and education on a topic that is so, so important. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our team, Stories Revolutionary. So we started 2 years ago. What we do is we take interviews of amazing people like you and collect stories from people like you. We have a lot of other events as well called Stories Unfold, Thugs and Tales. So what we do in programs like this is we invite storytellers who share their stories on public platforms. We have Thugs and Tales where open mic sessions happen. We have other events called Once Upon a Time. So in Once Upon a Time, we go camping. We take people to different places and we camp, we tent there. We have storytelling sessions and we do healing. So we have meditations, we have art therapy, we have dance therapy. So we make sure that by the time people are getting out of the place, they are leaving with much more experiences and feeling rejuvenated, back to feeling life fully. So those are the kind of things that we do. And we are so, so, so glad to be able to talk to you today and gain so much knowledge and learn so much from you. We hope that you keep supporting our page and our little community. Thank you so much for your time. Would you please tell something to the audience, whoever's watching here? Is there something that you want to tell them? Any message?
First of all, thank you so much for the wonderful work you do, and thank you for having me. My message is very, very simple, that, you know, just normalize these conversations. Everybody has sex. You poop in the morning, you have sex at night. So let's talk about this.
Thank you so much. That is perfect. You poop in the morning, you have sex, but you don't really always only have sex at night. So that's
yeah, of course. It's a 24/7 activity, so why not talk about it?
Yeah. Thank you so much, doctor. Thank you
for having me.
Have a great night.
And you. Bye.
Okay.